but we'll also ask you after this session to sign up for a short meeting with the Starline team to talk a little bit about the final group project that we'll present in session 6. And today's session, we're gonna look through your homework responses and have a discussion about those, and then go over some core concepts regarding patient attribution and activation. Here's from some case studies from some best practices in the field, and then talk a little bit about your homework, the same type of discussion questions that we've covered in the past going into session 4. After our last session, we asked you some questions about patient empanelment and patient engagement, and in sort of just some responses that we wanted to highlight in response to the question of how are you guys handling patient empanelment in your practice today? There were some themes, and then there were some distinct differences in the way you guys are dealing with this issue. Usually patients, so this one was interesting, usually patients are auto-assigned to a provider that and we see this all over the place. So this is a disconnect between your payers and how they are attributing patients to you, and the way you're handling who your patients are in your practice. So this practice is dealing with patients being auto-assigned to a provider that the patient doesn't know, is not familiar with. Your insurance company perception of who that patient's provider is not in line with what your practice sees. And so that disconnect we see a lot, and we'll have a little bit of strategies to work through that in this session. Another participant said that it means we have a certain number of patients assigned to providers. This is more contained to within that practice. The number allows us to see if our providers are full and who has room to grow, the number of patients they see, so they use it to measure their capacity. Another team, that they view empowerment as assigning a pool of patients to a whole team rather than just one provider. And then another practice kind of reiterates the medical home concept of empowerment being a patient identifying that a provider is their primary PCP, and they're going to see that provider the majority of the time they interact with the practice. There's empowerment is a concept that I think is easy to understand but hard to implement in practice. So we're curious how many folks are actually able to match patients with a designated provider, and about half of you do this and half of you don't. And one response that just iterated a reason why maybe you wouldn't be opting to do this is we don't empanel. When a new patient calls, we let them know about all of our providers at a given location who are contracted with their insurance and accepting new patients, and then they let the patient choose who they want to see. So this practice chooses to go through patient choice rather than maybe a back-end view where they're matching their patients, they're empaneling their providers with it based on a sort of pull of data from their EHR or something like that. So interesting approach. What challenges have you guys seen with patient empowerment? Balancing volume with acuity. So if you're going to say that every provider is going to see a panel of a certain size, is that a fair thing to do? What else do you need to look into in terms of how sick or how complicated those patients may be? It may not be fair to have every provider see the exact same number of patients on a panel. You may need to take other things into account, and we'll talk a little bit about those later in the session. Another challenge, disconnect between payer perception of who your patients are and who you've actually seen in your practice. So insurance companies assign patients to us when that patient is not regularly receiving care elsewhere, assigning patients to the wrong provider, wrong practice, or I think something thinking of providers see often is that an insurance company looks at is very provider focused on the individual level, and you may have providers who you may share patients between providers, and so it's challenging to communicate to your payers that you'd like patients attributed to you as a practice versus to an individual provider. So that your criteria of who your patients are matches your payer's perception of who those patients are. So these sort of speak to some of the complications of, and I think generally I don't think anyone answered yes. We're totally on the same page with our payers. We have a great system. We're all in agreement of who our patients are and who they see as our patients. And then our final topic in this session, we're talking about both attribution and patient engagement. So what methods do you use to engage patients in their care? So we have folks in the VLC that use care coordinators to do outreach, case management, health coaching, targeting special particular populations. Other folks just generally use outreach, motivational interviewing, and they just guide their approach based on what their payer incentive programs look like. And the final comment on joint care planning, joint improvement planning, care coordination, care site education with visual aids, and then this, financial consultation, so a pretty comprehensive approach to supporting patients and making sure that their goals for their care are clear and what they're going to sort of navigating the practice for them. Before we move on, any comments or questions about the answers you see from your VLC fellow participants here? Okay. All right. So we're going to do a quick recap. This is information that Amanda and Andy have shared in prior sessions, but just, the attribution process. Attribution is linking a patient and that patient's associated outcomes and costs to a provider organization, or a network of provider organizations. And we just wanted to review these general guidelines. That attribution is impacted by several upstream issues like eligibility in a time period or for a given contract, and by the patient choice as well. And generally, a patient is attributed to only one provider, organization, or network at a time. So you can't be attributed to multiple providers in a payer construct. And a payer may be attributed based on a different number of factors, and this last bullet here sort of introduces that ambiguity of why your perception of who your patients are may not match up with your payer's perception. So a patient may be attributed based on having seen you in the past, in which case you might be in agreement there. They may be attributed based on assignment rules like geography, and that can introduce some inaccuracy, or they may choose you, and that we would hope that would line up, but I'm sure there's reasons that it might not. And attribution, what we want to kind of do in this session is bridge this issue. So attribution is a payer level activity. It's generally payers assigning patients to providers. And so from the provider perspective, you need to understand that process and how the payers that you're interacting with are attributing patients. But in terms of the actions that you need to implement in your practice, what's really relevant for you in terms of your financial success is your care management and your general care management, general quality improvement program. That's the action that you can take within this attribution and activation framework that really support your success. Any questions about that? Does that make sense? Okay. And then, I think we've shared this before, but it's sometimes easier to understand these concepts if you can apply them in a little bit more, real way. So a good way to sort of think about some of these concepts is thinking about your organization regardless of whether this is your reality or not, but your organization being in a value-based payment relationship for your Medicaid population of your patients, in an arrangement where your bonus payments are tied to a certain set of clinical and financial outcomes. Some of these outcomes measure improvements in cost for the highest risk population of patients. And these outcomes are measured for the population of patients that the Medicaid payer assigns to your And, how is this related to attribution? So empanelment is kind of a way to think about the provider level analog to attribution. So, payers are matching patients to certain providers, and within your practice, empanelment is the tool that you have to match your patients to a certain provider. So, once a patient is assigned to you or your organization, you can assign that patient to a designated PCP, and that process establishes accountability for care, and it lets you it gives you the first step in enabling you to proactively manage patient care, which can support achievement of better financial outcomes, better quality improvement outcomes, that will support your success in the value-based payment system. And ideally, the empanelment is a foundational activity. So I think the best practice would be that you're able to look at your full patient population and you're able to empanel all of them. You're able to empanel any current patient. You're able to match them with a care team or a provider on a whole population-wide level. But that's really challenging to do, and that's a big, especially if you're a large practice or you have challenges with data systems. That can be an overly daunting endeavor. And so there may be situations where if you're entering a specific value-based contract or a pilot program, like for example, if you were to enter the Medicare Shared Savings Program, it may make sense for you to start this process with just a portion of your patient population and really refine your process and take all your lessons learned and learn from just working with a smaller subset of your patients, and then you can expand over time. But so there's room for both approaches. There's room for the best practice of working with your entire patient population, as well as working on a more pilot basis for certain situations. Some key staffing roles as you approach empanelment in your practice, you really need to have a clinical champion. So whenever the purpose of empaneling patients to a certain provider is to establish accountability. And so with that type of work, I think it's just really crucial to be transparent and to have a clinical champion who's able to pull out provider concerns and establish provider buy-in, because it will not be, any work you do here will not be successful unless providers are supportive of the process and feel heard and feel that the methods that you're employing to establish a provider panel, they're in agreement with those. So you need to have a clinical champion who's able to balance all of those needs. And then your other sort of key staffing role is your quality improvement and data analytics lead. And the scope of these roles depends on the size of your organization, and so sometimes these are distinct teams, sometimes these are one person. But we just wanted to highlight that these are really the key, regardless of whether this is one person or four people. These are the key roles that are going to support your success and your ability to empanel your patients across your practice. And with all of these core concepts, we're linking just to some useful resources that other providers that we've worked with have found helpful in how to sort of get started, because it's such a it's a foundational activity, but hard to do. And so the Safety Net Medical Home Initiative has really robust, this is a link here up on the slide, they have really complete and full sort of toolkits for how to get started with this. And we've worked with a lot of practices who've found them useful. So we've linked them where they're relevant here. Before we move on to care management, any comments or questions? What challenges have you guys seen? Do you empanel your patients all across your practice, or do you part ways in this process, or what challenges have you seen?
This is Ava Wilson from the Chicken Foundation, and
some of the challenges see is just agreeing upon when we're trying to define patient acuity. One of our things is, you made the comment earlier about impaneling a flat number of patients to each provider. Well, is acuity the same? And it's just coming up with the definition of what we want to, how we want to weight things for diagnoses or comorbidities, readmissions, what weights we want to assign to each patient so that we can better disperse amongst our panel. We haven't come across an industry standard per se of how you weight and what marks you use to assign, acuity to outpatient setting. And are those concerns that are voiced by your providers as you sort of approach this? Are they saying we need to be really careful about making assumptions about how many patients I can handle? How does this emerge as a concern that is an issue you deal with? Well, basically, when we started the panel project, we just had a flat number for each level of provider, whether it's, our internal medicine feel like their provider cap, their empanelment cap should be different than a family practice cap based on their specialty, or advanced practitioners, whether it be a PA or a nurse practitioner, how you treat, how you assign to those providers versus an MD or DO level in the same specialty. So when we're looking at the numbers, there's no real, or we haven't found anyway, any sort of real benchmark that everybody uses to say, an internal medicine physician in a rural area should be able to see this many patients a day based on this type of acuity. So it feels to them more like we're trying to come up with this versus pulling an industry standard or best practice and adapting that. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Anyone else?
This is Mike Trader from the Scanning Health Department. We have a different programs. So we have quite a few kind of mobile programs or mobile staff. Most folks would have looked at enrollment based on very specifically client geography is a role into it, as well as we have set kind of case numbers. We know about how many people they can handle because they're actually going to get the clients. So it's capped at a much lower number. At our outpatient sites, our outpatient world, we're based on, we're doing outpatient mental health. It's really based on their calendars because we know we have some clients who are kind of need the weekly service. We have other clients who need less bi-weekly or even monthly. And so, the only way we've really found to really kind of watch that is just on their calendar and watching their scheduler. So, we know if it gets to a point that they're completely booked out for 2 weeks, we know that's about where we want to cap them. We don't want them to get to a point that they can't book out. They can't get somebody booked sooner than that. But that kind of allows for, it's kind of got a built-in allowance that way for those who are more, or need more service, and those who also are more in a maintenance stage where they need less service. So I kind of balance.
Yeah, so the acuity indicators you've taken into place are sort of the intensity of service that your patients and clients need, and then you've also taken into consideration the capacity, the actual capacity of your providers. So okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thanks for sharing. Okay, so with care management, as another core concept, so care management is really the backbone of your success and value-based model. So your financial success is dependent on your ability to really influence patient total cost of care through improved quality, reduce unnecessary treatment and expenses. And I think the only real way to do this is through proactive and preventive care. What this will look like in practice, clearly you guys are all doing this. Population health management, proactive patient outreach and follow-up for preventive health services, and then targeted health coaching and case management, so really working on self-management support and engaging patients in their care. Key roles here, I think this is probably or many chronic conditions. And then you may have other types of health coaches or navigators who may be maybe unlicensed staff or a different role. There's more flexibility with that role, I think, to do the consistent, really time-intensive relationship building and system navigation. And both of those things are key. But you'll all be tweaking this in your practice to figure out what you have the resources to support and what works best for you and your patients. We just shared some additional resources here on how to sort of assess what you need and how to build up these concepts in your practice from the Safety Net Medical Home Institute. Any questions or comments about how you guys are handling care coordination, care management in your practice today? What your teams look like?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, this is Viola Anderson Diaz from Hartford, Connecticut. East Hartford,
Hello.
Connecticut, correct? Yes. And I guess our issue is that I think we're probably understaffed. Hello?
And how are you identifying that you're understaffed? What do you observe that lets you know that?
Well, we're serving approximately over 18,000 folks, and we're, in our area, and right now I think we have approximately about 4 care coordinators, possibly a 5th, but we're, and what we've been doing is more classifying where they fall in terms of the acuity of care. But it's us making the transition of being able to connect that care coordination with the delivery of services, and rather than it being somewhat as an adjunct, because right now it's considered to be an adjunct, but I think our challenge is great. Well,
Hi, you may have turned out a little bit.
okay, so I guess our challenge is truly integrating care coordination as part of delivery of services, because our providers see the patients, and then if they need something, it's more of a referral for care coordination. But what we need to do, given how healthcare is changing and how the payment's going to change, is that we really need to see care coordination as an integral part of the delivery service. And I think we're in that crossroads of trying to connect that care coordination with the day-to-day delivery of the service.
Mm-hmm. So right now that your care coordination is kind of carved out from the provider process. They refer to your patients think they might need it, but you'd like them to be more embedded in just like the day-to-day care team. You want your provider to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And what type of staff fills the care coordination role? Is it like a clinical support staff, like an MA background, or do you have RNs doing care coordination? What type of person?
Unfortunately, we don't have an RN or a social worker doing that at this moment. That would really be a great addition in terms of seeing more of the complex cases that sometimes are presented. Right now we have folks with MA experience, and I believe we might have another individual that has a bachelor's degree and is currently pursuing a graduate degree. But we really need a more sophisticated care coordination staffing that's really going to take into consideration all the comorbidities of our patients, as well as what their multiple needs are. Because more from a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, oftentimes many of our patients don't comply for various reasons, because their very basic needs aren't being met. And then when you combine that with behavioral health comorbidities and issues of chronic disease
basic quality improvement. And so how does this relate to attribution? Your payers are evaluating you based on quality and financial performance, and so you need to be monitoring your own performance on a much more frequent basis than they'll be monitoring yours. That's how you can identify areas for opportunity. That's how you can identify progress and track progress, and that's how you will know how you're performing over the long term. So what this looks like in practice is focusing on selected metrics over time, and how you select those metrics. I think is probably driven by a mix of what's the priority for your patient population, for your providers, and then what types of contracts you have in place, what types of pilot programs. Sometimes these metrics are selected for you, or they're selected if you apply for to enter the Medicare Shared Savings Program. There will be a set of metrics that are associated with your success in that program. So I think it's a mix of setting your own priorities and looking at what types of opportunities are available to you. Regular, transparent reporting of validated data over time. So this is always a work in progress, but making sure that as you've identified where you want to go, the metrics you want to track, and your goals for those, that you have accurate information, and that you know sort of how that data is getting input into your system, and can make sure that it's it's clean and regular and validated over time. And the third step is what you're going to do about the information that you're tracking. So what interventions you're going to implement, how you're going to evaluate their success, and really founding all of that in a data-driven approach. The key staffing roles here are, again, a clinical champion to really lead this role, your quality improvement and data analytics team, regardless of how many or few they may be. And this is where I think it's really valuable to have a multidisciplinary work group that has representation from folks beyond just your, maybe, I think you can end up overly relying on maybe your clinical folks here, but I think it can be really valuable to have people from all different disciplines who touch different pieces of your data. I mean, your data collection starts at your front office when your patient shows up, so it makes sense to have some type of representative that can speak to that and identify areas where you may be introducing inaccuracies without even knowing it. So I think multidisciplinary work group is really important in your staffing structure here. And then a governance structure, I'm sure all of you have some type of quality improvement committee, but this is where it's good to have your leadership engaged and have that process identified, so you have a good process in place that's clear on how you'll set your targets and set your metrics and monitor their success over time. The last piece here is some resources from that same initiative, the Safety Net Medical Home group, on really developing a good quality improvement strategy that works for your team. Any comments or questions before we move on to data analytics? Okay. So kind of the next level up, this core foundation after quality improvement, empowerment, and care management, is getting into how you're managing your data and what sort of reports you're pulling, and this next level of data analytics. So how does this relate to attribution? So your big challenge is going to be vetting your clinical data against payer data, so making sure that you can identify, validate, and track clinical outcomes for the patients that are attributed to you by your payers. And then looking down, like sort of drilling down into that information to risk stratify, to target high-risk, high-cost groups, and to track your performance over time. So what this looks like in practice is integrating clinical and demographic data from your systems, from your EHR, with financial and payer data, which can come from claims, membership, or eligibility info, and making sure that you're able to track your patients across those two systems, and that your information matches across those two systems. And this is where you start to identify and have the opportunity to reconcile conflicts between your perception of attributed patients and your payer's perception of attributed patients. And you want to there's probably more more work on the front end to get this smoothed out initially, but this is not a one-time process. This is a reoccurring process that will require maintenance over time. Your key staffing roles here are your technology lead, director of HIT, whatever this looks like in your practice, your quality lead and your data analytics team, and your clinical champion. And I think what we've seen is that this is where these roles are, it's tricky to find folks with the expertise that is right for SafeNet providers, and it's resource intensive. And so this is where sometimes what makes sense is to partner either in a network environment where other providers are sort of sharing this resource, or you may be partnering with vendor partners, your EHR or patient registry or other data analytics vendor partners. So this is where you can introduce a different level of complexity with relationships here. Any comments or questions? This is where I think people have a lot of challenges in sort of what makes sense and how they want to work through this issue. So how are folks dealing with this? Have you chosen to work in a network environment here and share this infrastructure across other provider groups, or do you partner with vendors here? I think someone on the call is developing a new system, or invested in a new system as part of the VLC. Is that right? Is it the Chickasaw Nation that invested in a new registry system as part of this program?
Yes, that's correct. We invested in the Midas software, and it's helping us with several things, but one of the things is our empowerment and assigning acuity to our patients and just ways across the board.
Okay. So the last piece we'll touch on here is kind of a supplemental competency, and it's kind of how you approach building relationships with your provider, with your payer partners. So having an open and effective line of communication with payer partners will help you, one, understand how patients are being attributed to you, and it gives you a better way of addressing problems. Whatever they might be as they pop up. So I think at smaller organizations we see that the key staff is probably the CEO or executive director. In large organizations, you may have a designated sort of contracting lead who's responsible for negotiating contracts with payers, in addition to the CEO. But then the other piece is that we see that this type of relationship building can be handled really well at a network level. So providers may come together in an IPA or some other type of network, and at that network level, they're able to designate people with more bandwidth to focus solely on building and strengthening payer relationships, negotiating contracts, monitoring performance targets, and really building a foundation to have an open line of communication in a way that you're just not able to do at an individual provider level. Any comments or questions here, either from you guys or from Sterling teammates? Okay. We wanted to share just a case study of how one of the leading ACO pilots sort of handled how their initial, the initial part of an MSSP and ACO program it's a good case study in having a population of patients attributed to you, and then you're handed responsibility for delivering on a set of outcomes for those patients. And so it's a good, the ACO program generally is a good case study for what it means to work through some of these issues. And the case study here is a very successful medical center who participated in the Pioneer ACO program. So Montefiore Medical Center is based in New York. They're a very large system. There are 11 hospitals and a very large primary care and outpatient services network. huge. They're in a big urban area. And so we just sort of wanted to highlight that there are relationships like that. You know, they're different than I think the environment you're practicing in, but they, you know, they entered the ACU program ahead of the game, and they had a significant level of infrastructure in place and the ability to invest in new programs and capital, but they were working with a very vulnerable patient population as well, something that will look similar to you. So over 80% of their paramedics is Medicare, Medicaid, and they're in an area with a very high poverty rate. So they were able to do these things, to make these investments, and to be successful in their ACO program, despite having challenging paramedics and having patients with very complex needs. So they're an advanced and early adopter, but I think that there's valuable things that can be learned from their case study in spite of that. So we're highlighting them here because they were the most successful participant in the Pioneer ACO program. And they really achieved their success through being really focused with proactive patient-based attribution models. They were founded and funded for their ACO in 2012. And their ACO network included their 3 adult hospitals, their primary care and specialty practices, and their already affiliated community-based providers. And then it also included providers who were previously unaffiliated with Montefiore, but chose to participate in the ACO program. Their care management approach was before they entered this program, they had care management programs in place, but they really consolidated this into one entity. So they formed kind of a company within a company to manage all of their risk-based and capitated contracts. And that care management company, which is what they called it, provided specialized chronic disease management programs, intensive case management, and focused on their data analysis capacities. And they identified early on in their ACO that they really needed to be clear on identifying and addressing social determinants of health, and incorporating those in their patient care plan, because they identified early that they were not going to be able to be successful with improving quality outcomes or reduce total cost of care if those issues that fall within that sort of social services space continued unaddressed. So the way they approach their staffing, so they're a very large organization, but I think it's good to look at sort of the key capacities they identified. They had a data analytics core team that led their approach to risk stratification and monitoring their performance over time. They had a care transition team and a pharmacy outreach team. So those are the places they identified an opportunity to reduce unnecessary treatment within hospital transitions and within medication management. And so they built up teams to address both of those areas. They had a patient education and health coaching team that focused on supporting patient self-management and building and really engaging patients in their care. They had a social work team that dealt with issues like housing and social services and things that fall within that more social determinants of health space. And then they had a team of diabetes educators for a large diabetic population, and so they had this group focused on preventive care and self-management support specifically for that population. Their results, they saw $400 million in savings in the first 2 years, and they accrued twice as million of those savings in year 14 in year 1, 13 in year 2, and then they were able to use part of that to continue to invest in their infrastructure, and part of that to pay out to their participating providers. And so one of the challenges they did identify is the sort of sustainability of their model, because they made their made their most significant advances very early on. And they definitely had identified, and I don't think, or I didn't have an answer yet, but they identified that they couldn't expect that level of things here that are more a larger investment or something that you may not have capacity to do right now, but we kind of wanted to hear, if we looked at some of these strategies, are there things that you have been able to implement in your practice now, or something that you, just pieces of this model you think must be feasible for you to work on? Any thoughts or responses as you look at how they chose to approach their ACO program? Or barriers you see to doing something similar? All right. So the second half of this session, we're going to talk about patient activation. Patient activation is kind of the top tier of the core competencies. And I think one thing we see when we work with folks is that this area of self-management support is one where patient providers and non-patient providers kind of report the biggest challenge is just how to effectively engage patients in their care and give them what they need to be successful. So this intensive case management, patient activation piece is really one of the most challenging areas that we see, and the one where providers have the most questions about what they should do, and how you could actually be successful here. So the way we've defined patient activation is specific strategies and activities that engage attributed patients in order to involve them in their ongoing role in their care process and ensuring they have the knowledge, skill, and confidence to actively participate in their care with their provider team. Patient engagement and activation are kind of often thrown out as the same thing, but we think they're a little bit different. So patient activation is similar to patient engagement, but it's really emphasizing the patient's meaningful participation in their own care, and patient engagement. We go to the next slide. You can look at it as kind of a spectrum. So patient engagement is you're working through those issues of who is attributed to you, who are your patients from your payer's perspective, who are patients who have seen you in the past but may have fallen out of touch. So it's really about sort of identifying who your patient population should be, and then proactive outreach to engage those patients in coming into your practice. Whereas patient activation is sort of less about engaging a population, pulling those folks into care, and more about how you build the relationship and empower patients to be active within their own healthcare. And so we can, you can kind of look at two different stages. So an initial relationship building where a patient is able to identify who their care team is, who their provider is, you're learning what their specific challenges might be, what their specific needs might be, and then a more advanced stage where you're really working on the complex issue of shared care planning, and then delivering on that care plan. And so it's a spectrum, and these terms get thrown out as similar, but we wanted to pull out kind of the nuance of what the difference is and how patient engagement leads to patient activation, rather than just conflate the two. Measuring patient activation is really hard to do. I'm curious if any of you are able to measure this now. Some of the tools we've seen providers use in the past are the patient activation measure. We've seen this used in funded pilot programs where a payer is interested in measuring this and tracking this over time. So this is an evidence-based tool that matches patients and in terms of their engagement in their care along certain levels. I don't think it's a widespread tool. There's a cost measuring patient satisfaction. And so we've worked with a lot of providers who are using CAPS to measure patient satisfaction, or using other tools. CAPS is an evidence-based measurement tool that it's used nationally, but I'm sure there's other aspects that you're measuring in patient satisfaction, so it's not quite the same thing, but it's probably more common to have providers measuring patient satisfaction, which is related, I think. So it's useful information, and it's a step towards really measuring patient activation. One, sort of a case study and a best practice we wanted to highlight is the intensive outpatient care program, which is a program here on the sort of the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, and California, that leverage sort of really focusing on patient activation, engagement, and care for some really significant results. So this program was created by Boeing and Group Health in Washington. It was a high risk. It was a program intended to target their most complex patients. So they saw 15% of their patients, representing almost half of their healthcare costs, and build up this care management program as a way to address that and reduce those costs. And as they identified this model, they worked with kind of an innovation group in California, the Pacific Business Group on Health, to quantify their model and spread it to other providers and evaluate success as they would see if it was something that could be used in other provider settings. I think they received a couple rounds of CMMI funding to evaluate their model and test it in other provider settings. And they, the Boeing and Group Health pilot has been going on for a long time, but that CMMI push to spread to other providers was funded in 2013. And they worked with 23 different types of provider groups, a mix of private providers and internet providers in 5 states. They had enrolled, in this expansion effort, they'd enrolled 15,000 patients by 2015. And their care model had a couple of points. It was a model that could be sort of tweaked. It had flexibility in how it was implemented in a provider setting, but it did have some key things that they'd identified as core concepts that you can have flexibility in how you implement their model overall, but these pieces were important to remain consistent. So generally, they would ask provider groups to identify a complex care coordinator. The provider group had the ability to select whom they thought would be the right fit to staff this role. I think most of the groups had a pretty high-level role, so mostly RNs and social workers. And these folks received a standardized training curriculum. They received a very comprehensive initial training together as a cohort, and then regular sort of follow-ups as a cohort. Because I don't know if you've seen this in your care management teams, but when you're working in a complex case management program, it's a very, it's a challenging population, and you're not always able to meet their needs. And so they saw it was a very draining. It was important to have that cohort-based support structure. So other programs in the past had challenges with turnover because this complex care management role was too demanding. And so what they identified as a way to sort of mitigate that challenge was the support of a cohort and bringing that cohort back together regularly rather than just an initial training, but having a really formal structure that led some support and that helped them retain complex care managers over time. Some other key attributes to the model, we'll talk a little bit in the next slide, but shared action planning with the patients, mixed methods of enrolling patients in the program. So the initial step was data-driven risk stratification, so really looking at high-cost patients, sort of driving into who the highest cost patients are, but they also modified, as they spread the model to other provider groups, they found it was important for both provider engagement and also for identifying real areas of opportunity to have the flexibility to have provider referral. So providers knew who would benefit from this type of model. And it didn't always fall along. It sometimes deviated from the really stringent risk stratification method that they had in place. And so they made room for what providers could refer into the program, and then they identified a group of patients through cost and outcomes data. I talked a little bit already about the navigator training and regular support via learning collaborative. They monitored, they required providers to use this patient activation measure to get a baseline for patient activation upon entry in the program, and then they monitor that measure over time. And then this piece of around data analytics was a really important function to have within the practice, but very few of the provider groups were able to incorporate that infrastructure within their practice. So that was something that they received either from specific business group on health or from one of their network partners. So that was, they identified that it was a really important functionality to have this for their risk stratification pieces, but they needed to provide that or provide it to some other partner for that provider group, so they were not able to invest in that in their own practice. The core elements of the IOCP program, these are their language on their identified core elements. So trained care coordinators, such as a nurse or social work-led team. This also includes community health workers or MAs. An initial, they call it a super visit, so the initial enrollment into the program was face-to-face. It was pretty early on when they identified a patient as being a good candidate to enter this program, and they call it a super visit. And so this is when they gathered their initial information about that patient, and also kind of provided them an orientation to what they might expect going forward in terms of services.
We appreciate your time and patience. Please stay on the line.
I think someone has
Back
put
in
us
just a
on
moment.
hold. I don't know if you're able to.
I'm not able to do anything about that. Yeah, if someone could please, whoever's doing that, could you guys please make sure you're off hold?
Thank you for holding. We sincerely appreciate your patience. Please stay on the line and we'll be back in a moment.
Maybe email the group, DJ?
Yeah, I'll try that real fast.
Their second core element was along an initial super visit within 1 month of enrollment. They had standardized assessment tools in a variety of capacities, and they had every provider and every patient had to complete that. They required monthly and confirmed bidirectional communication, so they wanted at least monthly contact between the care coordinator and all and all patients that are enrolled in the program. And then this really key piece was a shared action plan with the patient's own goals at the center. So this is developed at different points depending on what made sense for a provider group or how ready a patient was to do this. But they really feel like the fact that they developed a sometimes comprehensive but sometimes very simple action plan that was driven by the patient's own goals, that was really key to their success in this program. And then they helped provider groups establish form handoffs between the different capacities that were supporting that patient, like home health, behavioral health, transportation. And then they required them to be eligible to participate as a provider group in this program. You needed to establish 24/7 access to services, to any services they might need, and that the care coordinator, like if a patient was admitted to ER for a reason or scores or improvements in depression scores. They saw really significant reductions in total cost of care, as well as some utilization metrics like ER visits and reductions in inpatient days and inpatient admissions and bed days. And it's a pilot they're still expanding. So as they increase the providers that are participating, they're continuing to see results.
Hey, Sam, it's Amanda. Yeah, it's Amanda from Starling. There's a question in the chat box asking for more explanation on the super visit.
Sure. So the super visit was the initial, it was like the kickoff session from the patient perspective. So once the provider groups had identified that a patient would benefit from intensive care management, be it from a provider referring them in or from the risk stratification process that when the provider group entered the program, they would sort of sift through their data with the Pacific Business Group on Health and identify their high-cost patients. So once they had that pool of patients identified from both methods, they would do outreach and try and schedule this initial visit with the patient. And they call it a super visit, and I kind of think of it as like an orientation from the patient's perspective of what might be different for them and what they can expect from their provider as a result of participating in this program. And so from the pilot perspective, this is where they gathered all of their initial baseline data for things like that patient activation measure. So there was a lot of sort of data collection that they had to work through in that initial encounter. And then from the patient perspective, this is where the care coordinator starts to build a relationship with that patient or expand an existing relationship and define for them, these are the services that you can access now. This is the ways we can help you. This is what our care planning process will be. This is what we want to do with you, kind of describing for that patient how they're going to build a shared action plan. Not every provider obviously called it that because that's not something that's always translated well to a patient. But they kind of just told them what to expect. And sometimes in that initial encounter, the patient had a good enough relationship, an existing relationship with the provider that they may be ready to build their action plan, but often they weren't quite there yet. And so this was just sort of laying the foundation for how they were going to work with the patient ongoing. And really setting that initial relationship building. Does that make sense, Kevin? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments or questions or thoughts about ways to incorporate aspects of this into your practice? We'll stay on the line a little bit in case you have questions later. But for our next session, we have a couple of questions up on the screen here, and they're part of the Survey Monkey that AJ will send out afterwards. We'll see about IT systems that we'll talk about, that Andy will share at the beginning of our next session, session 4. So what information technology systems do you have today to support you in your patient attribution process? What IT systems and analyst skills do you feel you would need to be better prepared? How are you handling patient outreach now? And how you think that outreach process could be or should be modified to better support patient attribution? And then the last bit, so in our next session, we will introduce the final project, which is your final group project that you can that you'll be sharing in our last session in session 6. I think it sounds scary that it is, so sometimes we get questions about what type of project it will be. It's more of a case study, a thought exercise, just a couple of slides to sort of allow us all to sort of wrap up what the stuff we've talked about in this VLC, how you may incorporate it in your practice going forward. So it's not that daunting of a task. But we will ask you, after we introduce the project in our next session, we'll have a quick 30-minute phone call with you and your team to sort of talk through what you might do in your final project, just to kind of help you. Sometimes you have questions about the project, and sometimes they are considering different things, and we work through that with you. And even though we haven't introduced the final project yet, we're going to ask you to schedule this prep session with us using a link page I will send out before going into that session 4, so those are all on the books, because I'm sure your schedules and our schedules book up too. So you'll get a follow-up from AJ asking you to do this, and if possible, we'd like you to complete it so that we have that session booked going into our next session in 2 weeks. Any comments or questions in closing from any of you or from Starling? Okay, well, I'll stay on the line for another couple minutes. If any questions, you can either chat them in or speak up, and if not, we'll talk in 2 weeks.